Good evening, everyone. Call the meeting to order. And the first order of business will be the presentation on the proposed fiscal year 20 budget with Kevin Mahoney. And we'll also, to be a time for the public to comment on the proposed budget after Kevin's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Good evening. I'll refer you to a handout that you received at your place at the table to follow along with the presentation on the FY20 budget proposal. So as we open up with each fiscal year and talk about, excuse me, do we need something, Jim?
Oh, Jim.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You do have less than a 2/3 vote straight present, and 2/3 vote, regardless of the weighted vote present, is required to vote on the budget. I know we won't vote until later.
That's correct.
We should note that some very small portion of the vote is not here to see the presentation. Sorry.
I didn't hear all of what you were saying.
Without Arlington and Lancaster here, we have only 65.59% of the weighted votes present, and it requires 2/3 to pass the budget. So we couldn't vote until they get.
The vote comes later in the budget. I mean, in this
Yes, I
agenda.
understand.
So we hope that one of them arrives.
And they do have the presentation, they do have the packet
Right.
material.
Right. Thank you, Karen.
Just pointing it out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So as we start out each year, we remind ourselves of our guiding values to create success. You'll see that in your packet and on the screen here, where we promote excellent teaching, practicing PLCs, finding the right student for the right program for the right reason, as you well know, providing efficient learning environment, which we fully anticipate we will have next year, and achieving purposeful career and college results. As we look at our school-wide goals, you know, we continue with supporting opportunities for all teachers to lead in the academy model. We've been doing considerable professional development in this area, and I believe the staff has engaged this quite actively, and we're looking forward to full implementation. And the notion, or the concept of deeply integrating the high-quality career and technical education we provide with the very robust academic instruction to meet the goals as listed, literacy skills, executive functioning skills, and practical connections between disciplines. We also are very committed to our enhanced digital learning goal as well. So as we look at the budget focus for next year, as I've discussed many times with the Finance Subcommittee, it's been all about transitioning into the new school. In fact, for the last couple of years, a lot of our budgets have focused on that as well. So we really have focused a lot of our energy and effort on trying to identify the funding needs that'll be required to occupy the new building and meet the operational and staffing requirements, as well as the transition cost. And we'll identify those as we go through the presentation. But there will be transition costs that will be incurred. And there will be some overlap operating two buildings, albeit for just a couple of months, but we will be occupying this space over the summer. So this budget, when we exclude the debt service, which is the note below, reminds us that 6 of the 9 member towns voted to exempt the debt from their Prop 2.5 levy cap. We're looking at a budget of $19,660,330, which is an increase of 3.38 over the fiscal 19 budget. Last year, our fiscal 19 budget was 3.78 over the 18 budget. So, and when we look at the debt service related specifically to the building project, it's about $3.1 million. So when we looked at budget development guidelines, we basically level funded all of our discretionary funds and focused all of our efforts on what we'll need for the new building. So our initial budget request, given that mandate, came in roughly around $19.9 million. So we were able to work through, going through all of our various operating departments, a reduction of about $240,000. As we look at the overall budget including the debt service is $22.7 million. That's an increase of $1,608,690, which is about a 7.6% increase with the full budget considered, including debt service. And the total assessments to member towns is $15,856,904. That's an increase of slightly over $2 million, or a 14.74% increase. When we look at the budget history over the last 4 years, you'll see the decline, the increase going off into fiscal 19 and fiscal 20 is primarily related to the debt service. When we look at where we were in terms of our operating budget, we're probably closer around here on the $19 million. So as you can see, we had considerable growth last year, about 11.3%, but the growth level isn't quite as high this year at 7.6%. So here's just a breakdown of the capital and the debt service, and when you take a look at that, it's basically 81% of this slide of the debt service is related to the new building project, as we would expect. So when we take a look at enrollment, you know, we're continue to incorporate some of the guidelines and strategies that we've been working on, and through our professional development and through some of our engagement with the enrollment subcommittee, looking at improving our social media, improving our advertisement, improving our presence in the member towns. We're going to report later on tonight in the meeting our efforts to implement a school rebranding initiative and improve our website and social media. And we'll continue to talk to some of the larger non-member towns about, or all non-member towns that are interested in focusing on whether or not joining Minuteman is a good option for them. And also, a discussion that we've been having through the school year is about access. Seeing if we can work with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to deal with some of the access issues that we're seeing for non-member students that wish to attend but are prohibited by the regulations. So when we look at our overall enrollment this year, we have 354 in-district students, which is up 17 students. But, you know, we're on the out-of-district students, we are 162, which is a decrease of about 69 students, given what we've been, given the environment that we're in, and we're all aware of that. We recognize that that's a challenge. So we're at 516 total students this year. As we take a look at the 10-year freshman enrollment, over the last 3 years, we've been hovering right around that 100 freshman mark for in-district enrollment, and of course seeing the corresponding decline over in the out-of-district enrollment. But we are optimistic about where we are at this point in the admission cycle. And as an update, just by way of comparison, as you can see, last school year, the recruitment year, through the 12-month period, we picked up 147 in-district applications. This recruitment year, in the first 4 months, just going back to last week, we're 10 ahead of that pace. So we find that to be a very encouraging sign of the interest level that's out there. And in terms of out-of-district application activity, we have 24 that would be that could enroll very easily, And there were 21 out-of-district freshmen this year, so if we're successful, we may be able to maintain where we are on the out-of-district, but certainly intend to improve on the in-district enrollment, given the activity that we're seeing. And again, that's only through January 31st. There are a number of other initiatives and activities that will be going on. George Clement can talk to those if there are any specific questions, but we're by no means done with our admissions recruitment calendar. So as mentioned before, the overall budget is up 7.6%. I'd just like to get into some of the drivers of that increase. And, you know, we're going to talk a bit about new building impacts, but when we're looking at it, some of the considerations will be, you know, the new spaces that we're going to have access to with the new building. And as part of that, we're looking to add an additional multimedia engineering instructor. As you see, the space on the left is for the theater area there. And a logistics engineer that we're going to need to work and develop a program around supply chain management, inventory control to support a warehouse system that's very technical in nature, requiring some robotics and logistics training. In terms of the facility itself, as you look at the media center rendering, we're proposing in this budget a new position. It's a director of facilities. We're showing it as a 0.5 position coming out of the district budget, but it's going to be a fully funded position with 50%, the remaining 50% coming out of the facilities revolving account. Given some of the state-of-the-art maintenance requirements of the new building and some of the high-level technical support, we feel as though, and the potential development of the athletic facility, we feel as though having a director of maintenance will be a real asset to maintaining the assets that we're bringing on board. We're also looking at contracting out custodial services, which will have an impact on some of our staffing, but we think it's a cost-effective way to be able to maintain the building as it requires. So when we look at some of the other major changes in the budgets, our compensation obligations are about $591,000. You may recall we're in the third year of collective bargaining contract with our faculty, and year 3 requires a 3% increase, so we have 3% plus step increases that are included in there. There are some staffing changes that we're proposing that we'll review in a minute or two that show a net decrease in our staffing costs of about $200,000, just looking at the staffing changes alone. One of the things we've been very diligent about over the last number of years is funding our stabilization account so that in the event that we were falling short in our E&D or in our capital needs as we were going through this building project, we'd have our own rainy day fund that we could count on to backfill some of those gaps. But where we are right now with the project is we're very optimistic about where we are on our equipment due to some of the success we've been able to experience for the skills capital grants we've been able to acquire. We've been over $1.2 million, and we're seeking additional grant funds for that. We've been able to reallocate some of our Perkins money to dedicate to some of these areas. And, you know, we talk about advanced manufacturing, you know, some of these other areas, robotics, welding. So we've been very successful in that area. So the other reason why we've been funding the stabilization account is in the event we had an issue with this building, we'd have resources that we have to deal with, such as roof leaks and walls and things of those natures that we've had to deal with. So we feel comfortable now, given the balance currently at $766,000, that we can still add another $85,000. That would give us $850,000, and we can still have that cushion more focused on trying to develop or acquire assets to improve the new building, and less concerned about trying to sustain this building going forward. So that's a real benefit for us in terms of how spending good money in a good assets and spending good money in a bad. Instructional equipment, we funded $50,000 in fiscal 19. We're going to fund another $35,000. Again, these are for some of the smaller type pieces of equipment that we may not have collected in the project budget, or we may have things that just don't fit right or insufficient due to obsolescence that we could fall back on. So, other major changes: health insurance, it's up $140,000. Estimated 5% rate increase. I just came from a health trust meeting this afternoon at 3 o'clock where we reviewed rate increases anywhere ranging from 9% to 5%. After the trust discussed it, we haven't voted it yet. We're going to vote it next month when we see another month of claims data. But I think the trust has built up a capital reserve of about $7 million over the last 4 or 5 years, which is sufficient to be able to take some, I'll call it risk, but it's a minimal risk where we can go on the lower side of the percent increase, maybe 5 or 6%, because we do have that fund of $7 million. It's recommended that we maintain somewhere around $3 to $3.5 million in the trust fund. So we've had considerable success with our experience over the last number of years to allow that to go up. Yes, Jim.
So if the trust fund level were closer to that 3 million rather than the 7 million, what would have been your recommendation for a rate?
It would have been a combination of either a straight 8 or 9%, or some combination of plan design changes where we would shift a couple $100,000 more towards the co-pays and the deductibles,
okay,
rather than being borne under the basic plan.
And then on that latter path, that's something that can happen, that could have happened outside of negotiations, or is that?
The trust is part of the four school districts that make up the trust. The only thing that can be negotiated within the health insurance plan is the contribution level.
Okay.
The benefit plan is entirely the decision of the 16 members of the trust.
Okay. Thanks.
The Minuteman retirement, based upon our PERAC funding schedule, increases $20,000 to $270 a year. We're level funding OPEB. This is an initiative that the Finance Subcommittee wants to take a harder look at, but in terms of fiscal 20, that's what we're looking at. Utilities, based on some of discussions that we've had with our design team, it looks like we can afford to decrease our utilities by about $73,000 based on the projected consumption in the new building. And that also takes into consideration this building being online for a couple of months over the summer as well. We'll continue to do the 80% being charged to the district and 20% to the revolving fund. That seems to be the sweet spot, if you will, for how the building is actually utilized. And this does not include any potential savings we may gain out of a photovoltaic canopy structure that we continue to talk about including on the campus. You may recall that the governor voted $1.4 million to fund this project as part of the state's capital bond bill. But those funds can only be released at the discretion of the governor, and the governor has not done so. We met as recently as today with members of the project team and our consultant to look at options about whether, what are some of the ownership models? Should we own it? We may not have the resources if those funds aren't released. There may be some grant opportunities out there. There may be some arrangements with third-party operators that may make sense for us from a financial point of view. One of the things the architect continues to focus on is our need to hit our lead point for this LEED Silver certification. We have to hit 50 points, and this PV canopy project decision will influence our need to get over the top on that, because it has an impact of 2% on our MSBA reimbursement, which translates to about $2.4 million.
Are you saying that lead threshold has the impact on the reimbursement, or the photovoltaic project in itself has?
The lead incentive is really what we're focused on, but there's a number of different ways we might be able to get to that through some of these different models.
And that's a 2%?
2%.
So 2% of 144 million?
Of the eligible project cost, right. The 144 isn't totally eligible, but you're looking at about
that's a lot of money.
over $2 million.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, so we're working on that.
And the capital cost of the PV is more like $1 million, right?
$1.4 million.
$1.4 million, yeah. Okay.
So we'll continue to work that. We'll be reporting back as we move along. We're not under a strict deadline yet, but we have to close this pretty quickly, so we're going to be looking at various options. We had a lengthy meeting on that this morning. And I mentioned earlier the privatization or the contracting of the custodial services will be approximately $275,000. So when we talk about the new building transition costs, some of the staffing positions we're adding, some of these you've already heard, but we just tie the numbers with them. So we're adding the .5 logistics engineer and the .5 multimedia engineer. We'd start those positions once we're well into the year, which is why we're only funding them at a .5 FTE. In order to make the numbers work on the contracted services, we'd be reducing our building maintenance staff by 3 FTEs, and we'd be bringing on the director of facilities. We've included about $60,000 in additional days for teaching staff to be able to come in prior to school to help us set up the shops, set up the classrooms, just so that it's a smooth transition when students arrive. That's an estimate that we think we're fairly comfortable with. And again, the contracted service is $275,000. There's some miscellaneous supply costs, in culinary arts and in the school lunch program. We're trying to buy the small wares, the place settings, the appropriate silverware that to be able to serve what we call the student union, where rather than a traditional cafeteria, and then the conference area in the new building. Utility costs we just talked about a little bit. We'll see a slight increase in our property and casualty insurance, and so when we look at all of those costs, it's about $264,000 when we get to this point. But when we include the stabilization fund decrease, the net cost is roughly about $49,000 based primarily due to transition. So when we look at our staffing changes year to year, you'll see that there's a net reduction of 3.5 positions. Again, we talked about many of the new positions already, although when I present these on a budget basis. So some of these positions are already filled, but when we look at it on a budget basis year to year, we did add the director of admissions, which we fund this year, and we did add a social worker in fiscal 19. Those positions are filled, but these are the other positions that we're also talking about assistant director of career and tech ed for transition purposes and planning for retirement next year. Some of the positions we eliminated when the director of educational technology left, we restructured that department. There's 2 teaching staff reductions, 1 due to retirement, the 3 FTE building maintenance, and 2 administrative support, both due to retirements. Yes, Dave?
Kevin, how many full-time building maintenance people do we have now, or custodians do we have now, or will we have? We have now.
9 currently.
Yeah.
We have 10 funded, we have 9 currently, and we would expect to be down to 7 in the new building.
Are there any retirements among those 2 people who will be let go or leaving?
I met with the staff this afternoon, and we're working on different options to see what might work to be the least disruptive. So again, just in summary, that's about 3.5 position reductions. And if we go back to fiscal 15, it's about 19.5 positions that we've reduced over that period of time. So just to summarize the revenue plan, Chapter 70 is just about 10,000 more than what we had anticipated from fiscal 19. Our regional transportation reimbursement, we're estimating that at 65%, so it's projecting a slight reduction of 48%. If I tip my hand on that, I do not go with what the cherry sheet says that the governor's office issues. I usually take a more conservative approach because if fiscal times tend to get a little bit shaky, one of the first areas in the budget they go for is regional transportation reimbursement. So I'd rather be a little conservative in that line. Prior year tuition, you're seeing a decrease based upon what we're seeing in the enrollment trend, and we're level funding tuition in our certified E&D. We haven't received the certified E&D number yet, but we're fairly comfortable we should be slightly above where that 540,000. And so the balance of the 15,856,904 is member assessments that we'll be charging this year. So one thing you do not see on this revenue plan, but you will see next year, is the capital fee. We will be charging the capital fee this year in fiscal 20, and we'll be charging type A towns, so-called type A towns, those towns that have less than 5 Chapter 74 programs, $6,201 per student. And for type B towns that do have access to more than 5 Chapter 74 programs, we'll be charging $4,651. We will charge that and collect that in fiscal 20, and then we will apply it to offset the debt service in fiscal 21. And then once we get that started, we'll be doing that annually and reducing our assessments, debt assessments to member towns based on the fees that are collected through the capital fee. Jim?
And I don't recall whether we ever talked about sort of, taking a tenth of the capital tuition and applying it in the current year, sort of the way we do for the operating tuition. Is that something that you thought about, or is it your preference just to push it all into the next year?
When we worked on it with DESE, we were trying to come up with a clean transition in so that we could have a more defined process to start out, because that was one of the things that when we were meeting with town managers, they were concerned about how we start this process. So we tried to structure our debt service to delay some of the principal to coincide with the capital fee. And for consistency, what we do with the tuition is we do bring that prior year number, we apply 100% of it. And then the 400,000 with the current year, I think we've been just doing to sustain it.
Right.
Just to not create a burden on assessments.
So you think next year, but your plan is not to hold the capital tuition for more than one a year. What you collect in fiscal year 20, we'll see in the fiscal year 21.
That's correct. Absolutely. And then here is by account code, the expenditure side. I think we touched on some of the larger numbers already. The 500,000 is related to some of our teaching staff, contractual obligations. Student services is related primarily to our bus contract. We're in the fifth and final year of the bus contract, but we intend to issue bids this year to see if we can get more competitive bids. In some of the areas of health insurance, the 5,000 account, that's up, as we mentioned earlier. You'll see the decrease in the 4,000 in the operations and maintenance due to some of the staffing shifts in the 7,000 account. That decrease is primarily driven by the decrease in the stabilization account, and then the debt service, of course, we talked about. So, and this is just a summary of the capital and the debt service, and as you can see, the increase of about $1 million related specifically to the building project. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for Kevin from the school committee? Okay.
I should probably-
Sorry.
As chairman of the finance subcommittee, I probably should say this has been discussed at some length by the finance committee. There are no major, only minor changes since the first draft you showed us. And I believe the only change since the second draft you showed us has to do with the minimum required contributions from various towns,
Right.
which shifts the assessments to one community just a little bit versus another, but does not change the totals to be appropriated or spent. So finance committee was happy with that.
Okay.
And on behalf of the administration, I'd like to thank the finance committee for the work that was done. I'd also like to thank my colleagues on the executive team for their help in this budget process, and I'd also like to especially thank Michelle Shepard, the assistant business manager, for her help in putting the budget book together. Much appreciated.
If anyone has any further questions, we can perhaps bring them up if our other two members of the committee come tonight and we have the opportunity to vote on the budget. Is there anyone in the general public or anyone else not seated around the table who has a question about the budget or a comment about the budget? This would be the opportunity to do that. All right, seeing none, do I hear move that we adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? The public hearing on the proposed budget open session is closed. We now call to order to move on to our regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
and I recommend that the two missing members be telephoned to find out.
I've heard from them.
Oh, we've heard from.
I know why they're not here.
They're not going to be here. This
It's possible that they'll be here.
possible. Okay, so we may have to vote on a date for a special meeting.
Right.
By the-
To
what is
vote on the
the-
budget, yeah.
Yeah. What is the day? The date by which we must have a budget complete? Do we know that?
That I don't know.
We do have a snow date, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's right, we do have that.
Okay.
July 1st.
It should be 45 days prior to the first town meeting.
One or both may come, but they're not sure. But as I say, they did send me an email.
If we can still pass it before it's unanimous?
Not tonight.
No,
We can take a vote. And
My vote count more now?
absolutely.
No, if one of them shows up, it doesn't. That you're washed out again.
So you know I only get 1% of the vote.
No, you get 5%.
Okay, moving right along. We're now we'll move on to any comment from the public. If anyone from our audience here would like to say anything to the school committee, this is your chance. Okay, moving on to the chair's report. One of the roles that I play during the school year in the Lexington Public Schools is town meeting members go into the 8th grades at our two middle schools, and we help coach the 8th grade students to have mock town meetings in their classroom. They learn about town meeting, the meaning of town meeting and town meeting process, and then they hold a school-wide mock town meeting. But and each class has a mock town meeting, and some members of Town Meeting Members Association, and I'm one of them, we go in and coach. And we quickly say how we're involved in the town. And I always mention that I serve on the school committee of Minuteman High School. And then I say, if anybody has any questions, see me after the mock town meeting. And in one of the classes, a girl came up and said she was coming here, I think today, for an interview in the culinary program, and she was asking me, did I know what the interview was like? And I said, it told her not to be afraid of it, but they will enjoy meeting you, and they'll want to hear what you are feeling about Minuteman, and also promoted Minuteman. Remember that you're going to be you'd be in a brand new building next year. Anyway, the point I was trying to make is that never miss an opportunity to promote Minuteman, and particularly with 8th graders who are our potential students. So every time I'll be in a number of classes, and I always say to them, I serve on the committee. See me after the mock town meeting if you need to. This girl did. I was very pleased. Okay. Anyone else have anything for the good of the committee? Ford, I thought you were going to say something. All right.
Dave?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Ford was thinking about this, but I just wanted to pass on to the full committee that former Minuteman School Committee member Joe Scally of Belmont passed away last week. The wake is Thursday from 4 to 7 in Arlington, and in service on Friday. And I knew Joe as a fellow town meeting a member, and just as a person around town, and he was always keenly interested in what was going on here, even after his time on the committee, and was a very thoughtful person, and a great member of the Belmont Town meeting too.
Yeah, I remember Joe. He was here my first or second year, for maybe just 1 year I was here first on the committee, or two, but I remember Joe from Belmont. Ford, were you going to say something?
I thought it was 5 o'clock.
The wakes, I think, is between 4 and 7 at
Say 4.
At St. Camilla's, which is on Route 2 on Concord Turnpike, and I think the service is Friday at 11. I know that Julia's got a copy of what Ford sent, and that has the details, and so maybe if you can send it to the full
Very
committee.
good. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Joe. He was here when I first got on the committee, and he was deeply supportive of Minuteman and the opportunity for Belmont students to come to Minuteman, and I enjoyed him as a person, but his sincerity about Minuteman was very true.
And he would make sure to check my numbers when I gave the presentation.
Okay. Moving along to School Building Committee report. Ford, update on the school building project, and I know we have people who are working on our building.
Thank you. Marion Williams, you can come up, is here from...
Do you need the screen? You going to use the screen?
Yeah.
Then I'll get out of the way.
From from Castle, where were you from? Skanska.
Skanska,
Yeah,
USA
right.
Budget.
Greg Joyne is from Castle Booze. Trip McElroy is from Gilbane. Before we start in the presentation that we're going to show up here, Jeff always asks me, are we on budget?
My time is on budget.
I'll finish the on time, Jeff. We are on budget, and if you need any further explanation, Mary Ann or Kevin or anyone in the team can say, but we are definitely on budget, which is a very good thing. This is a superior team, and they watch it every minute. Now, in terms of on time, Trip, why don't you go through and talk about on time? Short answer is yes.
Yeah, so before we get into it, so we are on schedule. Obviously putting pressure points throughout the building as we progress the construction. Some of our key milestones that we're working towards in the next month or so is coordinating and working with Eversource to get a permanent power service to the building. So that's a series of several shutdowns that we're coordinating with them right now. And we're targeting early March energized date with those individuals. And then the other hurdle that the whole team has been involved with and working with was the National Grid work stoppage, which came off right after the holidays. So We're still in the process of coordinating with them to try to get them scheduled so that we can get our natural gas line into the ground and over to the new building. So those are our two kind of key pressure points here for the next month looking ahead for the building. So and I can walk you through the progress from the month. This was what we presented to the school building committee meeting on January 22nd. And again, it's been a while since we've met, so again, we're approaching the building because it's so long and drawn out. We're approaching it from two ends of the building, kind of working our way to the center and out. So you'll kind of see that progress as you walk through some of these areas. So AB, the north end of the building, this is the engineering suites and labs, which is your automotive engineering, electrical, plumbing, carpentry. So on the upper level, we are prime and finished paint. We're installing ceiling grid up on those upper levels. Lights are in progress, register grills, diffusers are being dropped into the ceiling grid, and we've actually started millwork this week, installation on those upper level classrooms and workspaces. Now on the lower level, in the engineering and lab spaces, little different spaces, not a lot of ceilings in these areas, so we're actually able to paint out the exposed ceilings. We're hanging lights, we're hanging electrical cord rails, compressed air, all the overhead work in that space in those classrooms. And then jumping up onto the exterior, some of the major mechanical equipment have arrived over the last 2 months. So the top picture is a shot of the AB roof level over the engineering suites. So these are all the air handling mechanical equipment that feed basically the lungs of those areas. So that's all the air movement up in those areas. So that equipment has been set, and now we're working to connect the overhead ductwork on those lower levels to the actual units, powering the units, etc. And then lower picture here is actually the electrical switchgear. So this is the main power source for the building. So that's been set. We're now working with Eversource to coordinate to get the permanent power source to that switchgear. And then this is a big effort for the electricians now. Now that this has been set, that gives them the ability to pull their feeds, their main electrical feeds from the switchgear to all the ancillary electrical rooms throughout the building. So due to the size and length of the building, this is kind of a big effort for these guys to pull all this stuff, and the majority of it is all underground too. So it's quite a bit of underground work there. So then jumping to the south side of the building, so this is building G, which is progressing probably about a week behind AB. So a lot of similar activities going on in this G area. So upper G, we're painting, ceiling grid has started. We're actually in the process of hanging lights, and the millwork is scheduled to start the next 2 weeks on this floor as well. And then just a shot of the exterior again. We've set mechanical equipment. We've started wrapping up the mechanical screens that enclose that mechanical equipment on that roof level as well in area G. So then progressing into area D. So this is the gymnasium, upper classroom space around the perimeter of the gymnasium. So you can see we're working through taping and sanding these areas. We're actually started prime painting these areas this week. So it's going to follow that similar flow that you saw in upper B and upper G. The ceiling grid will be next, install lights, etc. That same flow. So this is now inside the gym. So we've begun painting activities. We work to get the large overhead ductwork and large mechanical work installed so that we can then paint that area. And then there's a whole other layer of MEPs, electrical conduit, lights, fans, etc. below that. We wanted to get the painting up above all that smaller MEP stuff ahead. And then we're basically just flip-flopping this in this sequence. We paint half, move any storage over to the other half, paint the other half, flip-flop. Now the electrician's painting is substantially complete for the overhead, and the electrician is now taking over this space and start running his overhead electrical in the space. So the other main building system room is down in area D. This is the mechanical room. So this past month, the boilers come online or have been set, pumps, condensating units, so all the equipment in that mechanical room has been set. Now is the effort of all that overhead work that we did prior. They're now dropping down and making all the final connections to the pieces of equipment to be ready for pre-functional starting. This is a shot of the water heater room as well. So the majority of all the mechanical equipment has been set in these rooms. Now it's just the effort of making those final connections and getting the equipment ready for startup. So this is outside looking at the new main entrance. So you have your media center on the upper level. This will be your main entrance doorway right here. So you can just kind of see the progress of the exterior envelope. We're turning the corner here with the metal panel activities that continue on around this corner, as well as down here on the first floor. This is a masonry veneer, or masonry stone veneer, that wraps the front of this building. It's a little different than some of the other veneer that we have on the project, but that wraps around the corner, creates this big tower of veneer, and this continues around the corner of the main entrance here. So this is now inside, looking at the media center, looking out. So it's kind of a flip-flop of the picture that you just saw. It's a nice space here. Big open area. We're roughing in overhead MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, ductwork is ongoing on these upper levels in the E building. Framing is in progress in these areas with in-wall MEPs ongoing as well in these spaces. Then down the hall from the media center, this is actually a shot overlooking the cafeteria, looking south towards the kitchen area. So most of this area is getting framed up now that the major large ductwork is installed for the units. Soffit framing is continuing and really progressing this area. The framers are going to start working into the bridge area and framing up what they can over here at these overlooks, overlooking into the cafeteria. The elevator, most of this material is actually the elevator for this cafeteria zone. So permit is in place, and we're looking to start installing the elevator system this month as well. So then area F, so area F is your culinary kitchen. This is actually the teaching kitchen, as well as your conference and event space and the culinary labs. So we're wrapping up the exterior. There's some metal panel progressing in this upper picture to wrap this up. The veneer, all the masonry veneer activities is substantially complete. We're weather tight. All the windows are in place in this area. And then on the inside, the culinary kitchen area is primarily concrete masonry units, CNU, so these block walls. So that's substantially complete. That goes ahead of all the MEPs so that we can then frame out all the openings. So the ductwork has then progressed through that area, and then the light gauge metal framing, which you see here in this picture, then progresses after the majority of the large overhead MEPs are in place. So I'm actually standing in the restaurant, the new restaurant space in this picture, looking north back towards the Cosmo Labs, which are in this space here. And then area C, the last major area of the building. So we had a big milestone in the last month and a half where the masonry veneer was completed on this high tower area. This is your 70-foot high theater tower that's over the stage area. So it was a challenging area for access, getting materials on site, and actually performing the work. So that was behind a tarp for a few weeks now, and that came down mid-January, washed it. They got all the materials and storage off this roof level, and they have now jumped down. The masons are finishing up the last of this veneer on the lower level of that C building. Then on the inside, while the mason was outside, we were essentially weather tight. We had the roof on, we had the AVB on the wall, so work was able to progress while the mason was outside. This is a tight area to take a picture of, so I apologize, but I'm on the upper mezzanine, kind of looking back. So you can see that the Miss Metals contractor has been busy working on getting the stairs installed, and then all the theater rails to support the theatrical program and rigging program in the space that's ongoing. And now we're currently working on all the overhead ductwork. There's some large ductwork in this space, so the overhead MEPs are in progress in this space as well. Working towards getting the theater equipment is kind of the next milestone or next new contractor in this space. That's it. Any questions? A lot to see in here in 2 minutes. So.
Well, it's phenomenal when you go into the building, like the theater. You saw all what it looks like to be able to walk around here, which you can now do, and see what the students are going to be able to work with. It's absolutely phenomenal space and very intricate. They'll be in there for a while setting it up. That's really a lot of work's going into that one area. Again, anybody who wants to go through it, and Ed's not here, staff, if you want to go through it, give me a call. And if he doesn't like it, I'll handle it. I'm going to go through at 8:30, 8:45 tomorrow. The Skanska, so send me an email. And if you do want to come, you got to wear some boots because it's going to maybe a little muddy on the surface. And then it's These guys keep it so clean, it's amazing. You'll still want to have older clothes on.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how clean and neat it all is. So, and school committee also, tomorrow isn't the only day that we go over there, so if you want to go over some other time, let me know. Staff, you can go through your channels except for tomorrow. But, really, come see it. Dave?
Are we still leveraging the opportunity to have our students experience what's happening specifically within the construction
Our
trades?
students have been over there, and I don't know if they've been over since vacation, but before that, they've been over quite a bit. The plumber group came over, electrical group came over, so the answer is yes. I know the staff has gone over in the last week or two, maybe last 30 days. They're going in to make sure that the layouts are where all the machinery should be. I get very nervous about that. So whether the meeting room trip might say, well, they're talking about moving it, and I say, they can't move anything. But they can move it a foot here and there. So yes, the staffs are in there, are going in there now.
It's just, it's a phenomenal opportunity for the kids to see a live working project
Yep.
from design to implementation. And again, most of the students are not going to get this opportunity
Exactly.
in the near future, even when they get into industry.
If you remember during design, Greg, right, they were a big help.
Yeah, so, kind of tailoring into not only the on-site work, Gilbane participated in, and I wasn't there, but we participated in getting the presentation set up. And Gilbane has a Green Apple team, I think is what they're called, that came in and met with a number of students in the trades about the sustainable activities we take on during construction. So from the design side, we kind of set them up with, here are the things we took into account in the design and the sustainability aspect of the project during design. And the Gilbane team came in and explained kind of how they take those things and kind of run with them in construction. Things they do during construction, just a matter of course, and things that they do in construction that tie into LEED, as we talked about earlier with Kevin. They talked about kind of what impacts that has on each trade, and how that gets incorporated into the project, and kind of where the benefits of that stuff is. So I think it was an interesting presentation. I got to go through it. I wasn't able to be there that day, but it was a really interesting presentation. I think they did a really nice job getting it together and being able to come and interact with the students.
Yeah, the students were very engaged, and we fielded quite a few questions, not only after the presentation, but even when the presentation was done and the students had to leave. We probably, I don't know, Michelle, maybe 10 to 12 students stuck around and really kind of picked the two superintendents that we had come in to give the presentation about kind of their duties and how the sustainability ties into their everyday, field walks, and how they set up the job in terms of dumpsters, managing waste on site, and how that waste is handled. That's what leaves the job site. So
I see this as a potential opportunity where kids are inspired to say, I want to work for that company. I want to work in that industry, because they see how exciting and dynamic a project like this can be.
They're not working on the site here, but aren't they going and working in other places?
They are. And I do want to reiterate, the presentation that was done was very well done. And they did have a big line of students that were talking to them about futures and careers afterwards. So really, they did a great job, and they gave free stuff away. So very happy.
I think also there's another consideration to piggyback on this. Once we're in the building, as part of the contract with Gilbane, they're going to be turning over a building operations software system to us. As part of that, there's a module that talks about the training and use for students to be able to use a building operations software system where they can look at a particular piece of equipment and tag it and identify it and know what the model numbers are. It's a really cool tool, so that when someone's out in the field working on building maintenance in that particular industry, they'll really see the state-of-the-art software that's out there to
identify as coping systems.
Yeah, my point is we hear a lot about pictures and we get great updates. I just want to make sure that we're tying into what the original project goals were, which was to keep the kids involved. And that's great feedback, guys. I really appreciate that.
Dave?
The couple times that I visited, I saw at your morning conference, there were at least a couple of women who are around the table. Are there, roughly how many women are on site working? The reason I asked that, just speaking of the girls here that are in the Minuteman, might be inspired by women working on site.
Sure. I mean, in the Gilbane office alone, we have a few of us have left to move on to other jobs. We've had 5 women working for us on our team.
And they're on site here. That's good.
Yeah, and
Good.
Skanska, it's Mary Ann and
I know Mary Ann.
and Steve.
Good role model, Mary
What you're
Ann.
not seeing though is when you go out into the field and see the laborers, you don't see a lot of women, you know, occasionally you might see 1 or 2, but you're not seeing many women, you're not seeing many minorities. I mean, it's because we're here in Massachusetts, as somebody said, if we were building in Texas, it would be a very different kind of thing. So it's nothing that, you know, this crew is working on and thinking about, but it's the workforce that we
Sure.
have here. When you sit around and you look at what I call the management level and all that, I think the ladies are outnumbering the men, so.
Well, there were women around the table at the meetings that I've seen, and certainly obviously very effective.
Right.
Good.
Dave?
Yes.
I
Jim.
mean, I'm just to carry on to Ford's point. I mean, when you take a look at the graduation data in recent years here, it's also very heavily skewed towards the guys in those construction trades. And so that's something that I think is, I mean, we've certainly talked about as the enrollment. I mean, if you just had 15 more freshman girls in the trades, that's 40 more.
Mary Ann and others
more
are,
kids.
and Michelle, you're both working with STEM, you know, girls in the trades.
Well, we also have girls in trade. We're looking at Mary Ann, we have a great statewide organization that we're part of, and Mary Ann, both Mary Anns are also a part of, to support all of our young women in the trade. It's a wonderful organization, and all of our girls here at Minuteman participate in it.
Great.
And
Great.
across the state, we are definitely supporting this and really hoping to get more women in the trades. And there is a goal of 20% by 2020. And we would like to see more women out there with the work boots and so on. But, you know, they are a lot of in management. But yeah, we're going to keep fighting. We were just talking about this earlier.
Mary Ann?
I also want to point out that Gilbane has 1 person on our steering committee that's a woman.
Yeah.
So she's on our steering committee for Miss Rosen.
Alice?
Could you give a hand of applause to Mary Ann and Greg and Trix from Skanska, Pessilence, and Gilbane for their great work?
Sure.
They're an amazing team. As I go out there and, you know, I'm seeing some people say, hey, what about this? And why isn't that done? And this. They all have roles. It's like a play out there. And they all have roles and they do it exceedingly well. They don't like to argue when Kevin or Ed or myself are in there or get upset. But I tell them, you can say whatever you want. We like what you're doing. They do a great job. It is a fabulous team. So. Mary Ann?
I do want to say one thing, that every time you have a subcontractor, okay, coming on site, they come in, they do their work, and they leave. But we had a couple of women roofers that were on the job.
Yep.
And then when the crews got cut way back, and there's very little work, just mostly metal work going on. We had a handful of people, and the women aren't there, but they were there for the longest time. We saw the same thing with the Masons. They had a couple of women as well. Unfortunately, with one of the women, she was afraid of heights and staging. And so she just like hung on. They ended up letting her go.
Oh,
I
what a shame.
understand that, but it's,
Yeah.
and that could happen to a guy, too.
Absolutely.
So we had the same problem when Jeff Stulin went up on there.
Terrifying.
He was hanging on too.
If you've been up on Mason's staging, it's not the most comfortable place in the world to be. You kinda-
Especially when you have somebody like Ford trying to push you off all the time. It's really kind of a game, but a little
All right,
tough.
I got a couple of things. Any other questions? A couple of things we want to show you, if I do this right. I think it's right here, I don't know which one. So that's. Yeah, here we are. So where's the last two?
Yeah, so this will be the one on top.
That's easier. We're going to show you two films. Both are done by Black Kettle Productions, Andrew Mudge. He goes in once a month, and all this is on the website. If you haven't gone on there, it's all there. But I just want to show these two films.
So, and just keep in mind, the presentation we're showing you is the same presentation that we showed the building committee the 22nd. And if you haven't been out there on a kind of weekly or daily basis like Ford has, the progress over a week is rapid.
Week to week, and I wasn't out there for 2 weeks one time. It's incredible.
So we're averaging about 180 to 200 people on site every day, 200 workers on site every day. So if you just count them at 40 hours a week, that's about 7,500 hours a week, 7,500 man hours a week that's going into production. So good. Well, now we'll turn it over. This is way more exciting than anything.
When I look at this, and I think what Castle Brewers has done is just phenomenal. It really is. All right, now. That one? All right, so, you know, it's amazing what we have here. This was taken this morning. It's the rainbow. You think we have any kind of good vibes going on? Karma on this,
That's a good omen.
on what's going? But you know, then, this was yesterday, which is even better because notice where the gold is.
Also a double rainbow.
And it's a double rainbow. So it's amazing the things that go on here, and this team made those rainbows possible. So- So yes, we are on time. And September 3rd, I believe, is opening day. Sounds good. Well, you're going to be the first one in, or the students are?
It'll be an orientation, we're gonna do it in 2 different phases, because, as we mentioned, we're used to just orientating freshmen into a new building. This year, we're gonna be orientating everybody. So we're gonna break it up into 2 days, the 3rd and the 4th.
So we'll be ready. We're there, right? Right?
Do you people ever step back and look at the building and say, wow? I mean, because that's the reaction that I'm feeling, like, wow. And I wonder if you yourselves do that. If you come back on
Seeing these videos, I think you do.
through the videos, yeah.
We're in the midst of it.
It's really a wow building, thanks to all of you.
Let's say wow when we cut the ribbon. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
I have heard from several people who have driven through the property hoping to see the school building, who complain because of the big pile of dirt in the trailers. When will it be visible to somebody driving through, who's wondering?
It'll probably be early spring. So again, part of the job was with the site work contract was soil management. So the site was balanced as we
Oh,
cut the site.
I totally get that, I'm just
Yeah.
curious what to tell them.
Probably springtime. That's
They
just
trust me
all
that
those.
there's actually a building behind them.
We're hiding.
And they have watched the videos
They
that
have.
are being posted.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, I
I
keep
think
telling
these videos
Lexi to look at them.
A couple of them have actually been shown because the member of the building committee from Concord now is a selectman. Some of those tapes have been broadcast on TV as part of the selectmen's meeting. So
That's-
people are curious and then they know that the word
And
gets around.
I put some of them on the Dover website, so they can go right to the main page in Dover, and they can see it. So you guys can do that too. All right, that's it?
Thank you very, very much for coming tonight and for building that school. Kevin, I just have a couple of follow-up questions. I'm wondering, have the inspection fees from Lincoln has there been any movement on that to reduce them or anything or whatever?
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report, okay. And the 50% facilities manager, is that a part-time person or someone who will have another role? Or is that just to get them going? Or will that person have another role in the school as well?
That's a full-time position that 50% will be funded by the district through assessments, and the other 50% will be funded from the facilities revolving account. So it's a
Okay,
full-time position.
maybe you said that and I missed that, but it's a
It's okay.
full-time position. When you look at this building, I can understand why.
Sorry?
Okay. Any further comments or questions from anyone?
I probably stole it, sorry.
All right. Thank you for it very much. I know, we thank them too, but thank you as well. Because you're not out on a rig or whatever, or a scaffolding, but you're there every week, sometimes more than once a week, and you're our good eyes and ears for all of us, so thank you. And your enthusiasm is very obvious. Okay, moving on to the superintendent's reports. Dr. McQuillan is unable to be here because of family reasons, and Kevin will stand in for him. And the first one is, it starts in our agenda packet on page 6 about a report about the Minuteman Academy model with Michelle Roach and Nancy Houle, and also regarding the application process for the veterinary assistant, and also Pam and Alice will add to that. They visited a program at Monte Tech, or Montechusett Regional Vocational Technical High School. It was a presentation about their veterinary program. So we'll start with Michelle and Nancy. And once more, I guess, I'll take a little,
All right.
little trip.
So before I get started, I would like to make a couple of introductions, and thank you very much for having us here. We're going to try to get through this pretty quick, but what a great night to be at the school committee meeting. It's very exciting. I'd like to first introduce my colleague, Dr. Nancy Houle. She is the new director of the Minuteman Technical Institute. So she just started, and she hit the ground running, and we were doing all kinds of fun stuff. And I'd also like to welcome a member of our Program Advisory Board for Animal Science, which you'll hear a little bit more about, and where we're at with that, Dr. Bill Snell from Blue Pearl. He is a surgeon, small animal surgeon, and he is also the medical director of the Charlestown, it's Charlestown, right? The Charlestown Blue Pearl. So he'll
Welcome, both of you.
Yeah, he'll be here to answer any questions about our application or where we're at, but they're very, they've been very integral in our application process and very helpful. So, and I also want to apologize. I said the meeting started at 6 o'clock, so he's learned a lot about Minuteman today. Yeah. So we are here to just introduce you to the animal science program, and I know that Dr. B talked about it the last time, and part of him introducing you to the program was also to get your support for us to move ahead. So I want to thank you all for signing that support and supporting us in this program. So we're going to give you a presentation about the program. And we're standing back here because I guess Julia wants to hear us with the microphone. We're going to do three things. We're going to talk about our vision, we're going to talk about the components that we've completed, and we're also going to talk about next steps with the program. So our vision is, right now my vision for this program is that we will start this program next year, pretty aggressive agenda, that we will have a program that will introduce freshmen and we'll have an exploratory. I do want to, so this will be the fourth program since my tenure here that we have opened under Chapter 74, and once this one has been approved, this will be my third in 3 years. The first program was hospitality. That was the first year that I was here, the second year that I was here, that we got that approved through Chapter 74. The next program was last year. We started our advanced manufacturing program, and Alex Peters, the teacher there, just accepted 10 new freshmen into his program, and he has 10 sophomores. That has been an awesome program that we started, and there are also post-secondary programs at night in that program as well. And last year, or this year, we got it approved last year, but this year we just started our multimedia engineering program, and Mr. O'Connor's just accepted 12 new freshmen into that program with the waiting list. So it has been wildly popular with our students, and they're so excited to get into the new building, as is Mr. O'Connor's. So again, our vision is that we will start this program in the fall with freshmen. Along with our school committee and our business partners, we're looking to work really closely with them as we start this program. And also, I'll let Nancy talk a little bit about the post-secondary program and what her vision is for that program.
So the post-secondary program, because we are, Minuteman Technical Institute is in the process of becoming an accredited program, we are unable to announce or advertise any new programs for the time being. Once the accreditation process has concluded, we then will be able to inform the public that we have a post-secondary opportunity in the veterinary technician program. We see the post-secondary MTI component as kind of a fork or a feeder for students. We can take in Minuteman grads right into the post-secondary program. We can prepare folks at the post-secondary level with a certificate of veterinary technician. They can be set right to work, or they can continue their education at a 2-year or a 4-year program, or concurrently they can work and further their education. in a 2-year or a 4-year program once they have certification.
Okay. And
Yes.
so the post-secondary program is a 1-year program, is that right?
Correct. 990-hour program.
And post-secondary means it runs at night or off hours, right?
Correct.
So you can see that's our vision. And just like any of the other programs that we have started here at Minuteman, we've done this as part of Part A concurrently. So we have looked at I have my notes here. That's okay. We've looked at the 6 indicators, which Dr. B talks about all the time, but we have to answer to this in Part A for the Department of Ed, which is we look at jobs and job growth, we look at wages, we look at student interest, emerging occupations, existing programs from what other programs exist in our area for this particular program, and we also look for strategic partners and whom strategic partners that we have, and Blue Pearl happens to be one of those. So as we were gaining all of this information, we were also working on Part A of our application. So I will now turn this over to Nancy.
So Chapter 74 Part A, as Michelle mentioned, has a number of components to it, and these components Minuteman has successfully completed. So we've developed a program advisory board. We'll see more about that in a moment. We've scheduled and actually held our first program advisory committee meeting. We've measured student interest. We'll describe that very shortly. We gave assurance to the Department of Education that the program will be of sufficient length. They require us to provide in writing assurance that the program will be of sufficient length, and our programs will be 990 hours. We've done research and we've analyzed the findings of labor market information, demand and outlook forecasts for employment, and we've obtained stakeholder support. So our program advisory committee looks pretty robust. There are still a few required components that we need to fill. For example, a student representative needs to be on the committee, a parent representative needs to be on the committee, and we also hope to reach out to local, smaller veterinarian clinics to serve as another voice on our committee to bring a different perspective to our programs. So our first meeting was here at Minuteman on November 26th. It lasted about an hour. And we had a very good dialogue with our member committees, our committee members. And I think the enthusiasm drawn up from that meeting was palpable, and Dr. Snell has commented on that. As much as this evening's been an education for him, that 1 hour was a very good education for him as far as what are the next steps. Student interest was gauged by a survey from the admissions department. We had 401 8th graders attend Showcase Day by town or by school, and each student was asked to complete a survey. The total number of surveys returned was 401. The total number of students expressing interest in an animal science program was 149, which came out to be 37% of all students surveyed. And the next highest group for comparison was the combination of culinary and cosmetology. They had 24% interest. So you can see that there was definite interest from our current 8th graders in the concept of bringing this program to them. We talked about the appropriate documentation. The Department of Ed provides us a form that we complete. The superintendent signs it, and it does give our assurance to the Department of Ed that we will provide 990 hours of instruction in these programs. One of the things that we looked at was a lot of data, and we had help from Blue Pearl, we had help from Greg Bunn, who's the Executive Director of Mass Hire Metro Southwest. And we kind of reviewed a few different sites, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupational Outlook Handbook, and then Blue Pearl provided some very specific data. But just to show, you don't know how exciting this is for me to use technology because I'm not a technology person. So for the 2 years, 2017 to 19, there's a base total of 3,050 jobs. And across the span of 2 years, it was expected to grow by 230 positions or by 7.4%. If we expand it out again for veterinary technicians across the time span of 2019 to 2026, we see that there's a projected growth of 590 positions or 18.6% growth rate. So that would be the post-secondary certification. The secondary certification for veterinary assistants across 2 years, you see a bump of 100 open position or a growth of 5.5%. And then across the same time period as we looked at up here, it bumps from 1,640 positions to over 1,900 positions, which is a growth rate of 270 positions or a 17.6% increase. And then if we want to expand the whole process out, conceivably a student could start here in 9th grade and work their way through veterinary school. So professional licensure increased the same, a 17.6% rate of increase. So there is definite demand in the field. Blue Pearl provided us some very specific information about specific job postings and by region. So in the Boston region in 2018, now these numbers may seem small, but they had 35 positions to be filled. They filled 29 of them, which is an 83% fill rate, but then you can flip it and say there's 17% of those positions went unfilled. And the average time to fill a position was 108 days. So there's where you really see that need and that demand. If you expand the view out to the Northeast region the same year, there were 176 positions to be filled, 136 were filled, and so 77% of those positions were filled. If you flip it again, there's still 23% positions unfilled. And the average time to fill was 82 days. So it's about 3 months to fill a position. And that's where we also see a drive and a need. So our current industry-based partnerships, again, as required by the Department of Education, we need to reach out and develop these partnerships. We, again, Blue Pearl, UMass Amherst Mount Ida campus has joined us. Mass Hire, we have 3 Mass Hire boards that work with us. And then the Education Alliance also has representation. And again, we'll reach out to students, parents, and the smaller local veterinary clinics to expand and deepen the voice. So Michelle will take you through next steps.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So I do want to inform everybody that we did submit Part A of our application, and Part A, we found out on Friday, was accepted and approved by the Department of Ed. Yay! So we were super excited. I was excited. On Friday when I got that notice, I sent a blast out to our advisory board members who have congratulated us, and you know, Dr. Snell said, well, you guys make things happen around here. I'm like, oh yeah, we do. You know, so we're really excited about the next phase of this process. So when we take a look at Part B, this is where we get to do the fun stuff. This is where we get to build a program. So, and this is all the great stuff. We're going to need a lot of input from our advisory board members and all of our stakeholders. But this is where we're going to continue to recruit members. We're going to meet several times over the next few months and continue that process. We have to determine and look at our curriculum needs and develop a program of studies that is in alignment with the Massachusetts frameworks for animal science. We're going to determine we're going to run this program. And we also have to come up with a health and safety plan. The Department of Ed is huge in safety, and they want us to develop this robust health and safety program, which we will do that. And we'll have to hire a teacher, which is going to be pretty important. And last but not least, we will bring in the Department of Ed, and they will give us final approval on the program. Once we know where we're going to be, who the teacher is. Ideally, we would love to have this program approved April 15th, which is the first deadline for approval. However, there's also a second time frame for approval, and that's the November 1st time frame, which is next year. And so we would have to get all of our application, all of our stuff done by in October. And the reason they give us that buffer time for a brand new program, that allows us to hire a teacher if we do that over the summer, because we have to have a teacher on board before they'll approve a program. So we did the same thing with multimedia engineering, which we didn't officially get approved until this year. Mr. O'Connor's wasn't brought on until the summer, so we were able to get it approved this year. We'll probably do the same thing with this new program. But we are super excited about it, and thank you for your support. What we have done also is that we've gone to the Blue Pearl. They were nice enough to bring us on a tour and show us around their facility. Dr. Houle went to Monty Tech to take a look at their program, brought back some great ideas from them. And we are also going to Monty Tech on Friday to talk to their vocational director and get some, what not to do and what to do as we move forward with our application. They're very willing to help us out, and we're going to do that. But, we've come a long way since just last month when we were asked for your support. So again, thank you very much for your support. And if you have any questions for me or even the good doctor here, that would be awesome. Yes?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Oh.
You go ahead, Michelle.
The first question is, I assume that we're looking at this as a done deal, that this program will begin next year and that we have money in the budget for it and that we have appropriate space in the new building for it. Is that all correct?
In terms of space, we're looking at different options.
Right.
We're looking at perhaps using the Tremont building that will be vacated, that we can utilize the space there. So I think we have to be planning on being able to transition the record program on.
Okay, so that's it. So just two little follow-ups.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
Follow up on that because you asked about space, but you asked about staffing.
Yep.
And it's not on the new staffing list. So where's the fee? Where's the funding for the?
We haven't placed the actual position yet until such time as we get the approval. So we'll need to review that. What we've been looking at is space considerations. Are we looking at a full-time person coming on? Would it be through MTI?
Well, we're still looking. We are still looking at that, but we're also we have a partnership with Blue Pearl, so we're still working out a lot of those details, and this is the time when we do that. So, and you asked, it's a done deal. In my eyes, I can't look at it any other way than that, and to continue to move forward and present what we have, and that's part of the reason we have an advisory board as well to help us work out some of those issues.
And I have a couple of questions for the doctor. Sure. Okay, so the first one, while I have you here, my 16-year-old Labradoodle, okay, I'm not going to go into bumping his ear, not interested. I do have one very important and serious question. Where does the name Blue Pearl come from? I don't see a Blue Pearl and say, vets. It doesn't spring up. There must be some origin for that.
To be honest with you, they started off as Florida vet specialists and New York City vet specialists, and Blue Pearl, I think they had a sounding board mark for something that sounded good, because they had hospitals in a number of different states, and they needed something that wasn't very specific to the state, and they had a group of people who came up with that title, but there's no greater story than that.
Yeah, it sounds like it came from a group, so I just want to make sure of that.
I was part of New York City vet specialists at the time, and they made that transition, and there was really nothing to report about. Let's put it that way.
I'm looking forward to the start of the program next year. I'm pleased with the speed at which it has been put together, and impressed by that. Yeah.
So going on back to the budget that we haven't voted on yet. have you and Kevin worked out what you think the budget for this program is, especially for fiscal year 2020?
No, we haven't exactly worked out some of the particulars of
Right.
of it because it was uncertain up until recently. We just got the approval last Friday. So we need to work through how we bring this on board. We're still working through it.
But, I mean, just sort of a ballpark sense, do you think that the FTE is going to be, 3/4 of what the program cost is, and the other 25% would be non-personnel costs, or?
I think that's a question that Michelle and I will ask on Friday when we go to Monty Tech and kind of pick their brains and hear their details. And that can give us kind of a direction.
But sort of ballpark guessing, we're talking about all in, maybe 150 or 200 for fiscal year 2020?
I think really you're getting ahead of where we're at in
Yeah.
terms of trying to nail down a number.
Yeah.
We're not looking for approval of the program tonight,
Yeah.
it's simply an update.
Okay.
Yeah, and, just to follow up with that, we still have to go, we're going through the curriculum to take a look at equipment needs, and where this is a phase-in for the freshman exploratory. I know that and I will just use multimedia as an example, we don't get into a lot of the big equipment and a lot of that too, where it was very expensive to get the program started. And we're also going to use Blue Pearl in their probably less than 10 minutes away, their Waltham campus, which we went to, and we're going to use them, and our students are going to probably be in there some of the time, at least exploring and coming back here and, learning about the program, so.
So we have 2 hospitals, one's located in Charlestown, but one's in Waltham, not too far from here, so.
Yeah. So we will keep you updated. We'll also share this PowerPoint with you, but as we move the program along, we'll definitely let you in on everything else.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, you're not jumping into it all 4 years, on day one. It's a gradual implementation, and there must be some overlap with relevant classes, teachers that you already have on the property.
Yeah, but that's kind of where I was going,
Yeah.
is that, again, new academy model and certain classes like biology and that type of stuff. Although mammalian physiology, human versus animal, is dispersed, there is a lot of commonality that can be taught at the base level.
There is.
And so I'm assuming that the integration with the sciences and the science academies and the health assistant.
And with health assisting, yeah.
Would have some level of ABC care, emergency circulation,
Right.
critical care stuff.
And that's where the curriculum development is going to come in handy. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, it's kind of what we had talked about, is
Right.
like having, at least the way I had looked at it before we brought this up, was I'm assuming, when it comes to the vocational schools that have dentistry or human nursing sides of things, a lot of this is very overlap curriculum. There are subtleties, obviously, that are going to be slightly different, that will probably require a different route there, but majority of it, medical math, all this sort of stuff is very basic. Physiology and anatomy is all very similar.
Right.
Thank you. Carrie?
But it's also part of what makes it logical for Minuteman to take over, or to take on, because we're already partway there.
Right.
It adds another reason for students to choose Minuteman,
Right.
and spreads the resources we already have and will continue paying for over a larger and broader student body. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you too. Also,
We have one more question over here.
I was going to ask you to join in and tell what your experience was at the Monty Tech.
Before that, I actually have a question.
Sure.
I think we're incredibly fortunate that Blue Pearl, is interested in partnering with us on this. And I'm just curious at this point to hear a little bit more from your standpoint, your vision of the partnership.
Sure, so I think you guys have hit the nail on the head to a certain extent of trying to find a way to have your students interact with a lot of the doctors and nurses that we already have within our 2 facilities. I think that we certainly do need to develop the relationships with some of the general practices in the area as well, because obviously when they leave this program, the intent is not to just dive right into emergency and specialty medicine. There's obviously a ton of jobs out there that are in just general practice medicine as well. And so I think it'll be very good to develop that side of the advisory board so we can make sure that we are touching all the different avenues. But as far as curriculum is concerned, I'm excited to see how that overlaps with a lot of what you guys have and what are the interests. Monty Tech's a great program. I know the dean over at Becker who helped develop that, and then Tufts and Tech has a program as well, as does Angel and Neshoba. So there's a number of these vocational schools with similar mindsets of what they've done. I think our goal is to look at what they've done and improve upon it and make it an even better program. But I mean, I think that's what's going to be kind of exciting over the course of the next few months.
Right. Yes.
So one of the other elements to keep in mind is that Lancaster, Stowe, and Bolton are right farm communities and have a lot of
large animal
populations and the dairies and, alpaca farms and that type of stuff are actively looking for vet techs and stuff on staff to keep their herds and
that's a great
animal population. So again, while it's not necessarily a position in a working hospital, there are a lot of students coming from those regions that have 4-H and animal husbandry affiliations, and this is an augmentation of that.
Which is awesome. And if you know of anybody that we could recruit for our advisory board, please let me know, because that's...
We can talk, there are a number of horse farms and alpaca farms that are in the area.
That would be great.
Again, depending on what we're looking to do with the program.
Right.
You might want to reach out to them. Again, I don't want that to be a distraction, but again, as far as looking at opportunities for positions for these kids to go to, that's a tangential role.
Right.
Rather than traditional vet tech.
Well, it's good for them to know what opportunities there are for that particular, this kind of work, and that as the program evolves, they might be able to expand it. You might consider large animal care
Right,
too,
yeah,
or
that's
whatever.
right.
Okay, thank you.
So again, just thank you for your support.
Very, very much.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
And Alice and Pam, would you, who went to the
MASC
presentation there, along with Nancy Houle was there, as you know. Can you tell us what your experience was? I was looking at the material we have in our packet. Very intriguing.
So MASC prepares programs.
Thank you both very much, Dr. Snow. Dr. Thank you very much.
So MASC does programs periodically to try to help school committee members understand what's going on out there in other school districts. And it just happened that Monty Tech was going to do this program, and it's part of the whole, it's kind of dovetails with the state's interest in having schools help each other understand how to develop these types of programs. And it was extremely bad weather, but Pam and I went out to Fitchburg and went to this program. We saw Glenn Kuchar, who is a distant cousin of Jeff's wife, and he says hello. But what was noteworthy is that Assabet Valley and Essex North Shore were both represented there, and they are also both producing this type of program. They're in the sort of pipeline, kind of in the thinking phase of it. And Superintendent Sheila Harity, who's the superintendent at Monty Tech, was at Worcester Tech, worked for something like a decade with Ted Coughlin. So she has a lot of experience in developing programs. And she's a very interesting speaker and so forth. And, you get the impression when you listen to her talk about her program and these other people talking about their programs, that the development of these types of programs is kind of like the way people say changing the wheels on a moving train, because it moves so quickly. There are so many different parts of it: the Department of Education, the local support, the partnering, the agreements, the 70, 30, 50, whatever splits that they do in terms of the business model, the policy development, the types of policies that they had to develop in order to do this kind of program are interesting, because they mentioned naming rights when they do fundraising. They named rooms, they named equipment, they named the program, and they said in the current environment that we all live in, naming and unnaming were both important, and everybody got a good laugh. Anyway, these other schools had come, from North Shore, from Essex Aggie, and also from Assabet in this particular bad weather, it was just quite surprising to see them there. I mean, it was really bad weather.
Who
So-
drove? Alice drove.
I drove, and it was, she kept me from going off the road. Anyway, they said that Worcester Tech sees 500 animals a month in their program, and they have a program, they have an interest in not competing with the local veterinary clinics, so they actually use SNAP cards and other proof of eligibility, so they can decide like who they're going to serve. They only accept animals by appointment. Monty Tech will do the same thing. They did the same thing where they started the exploratory before they had their space, so that they could then move into what they had put together for the space. And, you know, they did a very elaborate program of building out there because they don't have a building project. They are one of these huge vocational districts. In fact, they have 18 member towns and 22 school committee members that doesn't have a building project. They have, you know, $5 million a year, and they do something over the summer. So, yeah. So they did tons of fundraising. They had a local foundation that's been there since the beginning, but they sort of coordinated with their community foundation, and then they, this is all not really that relevant, but they paid all the contractor bills through the community foundation, and then the school committee accepted things as a donation. It was very complicated, but they worked it all out somehow, and they had a lot of students involved in the construction of the space. Except for the things that they couldn't do,
Right,
and it
like-
gave the teachers an
Like
opportunity
the
to
floor
kind
of the
of
foundation.
put together stuff that was more commercial grade construction techniques. It was very exciting to the staff as well. So it was a fantastic program. It was probably one of the best I've been to through MASC. And it gave me renewed excitement about this, and reminded me of how exciting the vet tech thing is right now all over the place. I mean, they're all going in. So that's what I learned.
Yes, Pam, go ahead.
And I don't have a whole lot to add to that, other than it, you know, it was I was interested in going because we had just heard about this at our last meeting, and I thought, oh, isn't this timing great? It did seem like there was, you know, a sort of certainly tremendous need all over the place. It was really interesting to hear some of the things that they unearthed that they needed to look at. Such as, for example, it was really important to get the support of local clinics. The local clinics were concerned that they might be competing with them. They didn't want to be in that situation, so they needed to set up a model where they wouldn't be in competition with local clinics. Even just the decision about where to house the program, and looking at the experience, for example, that Worcester Tech had. You know, they decided that they wanted to house it in this separate building because they said, no, you know, the experience of Worcester Tech, no matter how well they had labeled where to go with your animals, people were walking in the front door of the school, you know, with their animals, and they wanted to avoid that. So there was just a lot of information, you know, a lot of information shared by a number of people. So it was, you know, very worthwhile going to.
I'll like one question, then I'll come to you. And with Nancy and Alice and Pam, did you see anything, or hear anything, or learn anything from that presentation that you could bring back to, that could apply to how Minuteman approaches this program?
Nuances of just about everything. Nuances of just about everything. You know, we might not have our students as involved in the building project, but we may have our students as involved. So if that were to be the case, one of the things that Dr. Harity spoke of at length was the sense from the teachers initially when they heard what the plan was. The teachers were kind of off-put a little bit because they didn't want their learning process to be turned into a what's the word they use, like a building site. You know, they didn't want it to be treated as though it was a building site, even though it was a building site. They still wanted to be able to have the time and the approach that they needed as educators versus as construction managers. So they didn't want people coming in and say, hey, you have 2 weeks to do this. They wanted to have the flexibility to say, I need 4 weeks to do that. And once that was worked through, everything went smoothly. And then they had increased buy-in, and they then had kind of ownership of it. And the masonry teacher said, you know, we could probably work with this material that we don't ever have a chance to work with if we do this by the front entryway. And then the plumbing teacher said, you know, I've not had the chance to do radiant floor heating with the students. Let's put radiant floor heating in the 2 classrooms.
Do you see some possibilities at Minuteman for some of, I know it's, I read about the building project there, but other kinds of things that say, gee, we hadn't thought of that, but that might work or work at Minuteman. It might be something we really should consider, sort of thing.
The naming rights thing was incredible.
Uh-huh.
The foundation partnership. was
Yeah, I wondered
incredible.
about that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll see how it goes. Jeffrey?
I just want to take the opportunity to express appreciation for the amount of work that's required to bring so many new programs online at once. And I'm just even focusing on the bureaucratic part of it, you know, dotting all the I's and crossing the T's of the forms to make the state happy, and the rate at which that was able to be done to impressively have the possible opportunity of starting this program so fast, along with the other programs that we're working on. So you hear, I might as well, you know, make the comment.
And to remaining cheerful and upbeat, which you always are. At least when you come to us. So thank you both. Okay, and thank you, Pam and Alice, for
Death-defying ride.
right, your death-defying ride, persevering, and then coming back with really very interesting presentation and information that we can integrate and think about for our program. Looks like a great program we all look forward to. So thank you all very much. Okay. We have anything under goal 2 or 3 from you? Any updates from you? Kevin?
We do not, we have an update with goal 4.
Okay, so moving through the agenda, move to page 2 and goal 4. Goal 4 about the bid results, school branding and website development.
Yes, this is a continued discussion that we're having. Some of these suggestions came out of the enrollment subcommittee discussions, as well as recommendations from the administration. We indicated that we wanted to address some issues regarding branding, logo, website redevelopment in this fiscal year. So we issued an RFP to 4 potential vendors for this service. We received 1 response back. The response came from Valley Design. George Clement and Maggie Miller reviewed the response before we opened up the price and determined that the technical response met the specifications as we called for. And it's laid out in somewhat, and then the proposal's laid out in somewhat of a menu option where we look at logo system, website design, building signage, rebranding, and the total cost came in about $24,000. We were expecting somewhere around $30,000. So we're going to go through and identify funding to be able to move forward for this and execute this contract so that we can take care of that piece. One of the things I was intended to get into when we were going over the budget discussion was that we did earmark additional funds for additional marketing efforts. And perhaps we can talk about that under the budget process for fiscal 20.
Any question from anyone? Yes, Alice?
Can you help me understand why the rebranding and the logo and so forth is the thing that is very important first? Why are we doing that right now?
I think part of it was we were trying to identify some areas that we could address immediately. The marketing initiative, although talked quite a bit at the school committee level, that scope hasn't necessarily been defined in a way that we could proceed on it, and given some of the estimates that we were looking at, we knew we couldn't necessarily reach that this year. So I think we were trying to react to some of the things that we think we could respond to right away. And those are some of the areas. George, do you want to add any more comments to that? Or?
That was good.
Okay.
Ford?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend you hold off. So I looked at the proposal, and Alice mentioned about the branding and doing stationery and business cards and all that. I think we need to have a far greater understanding on how that's going to produce more students and enrollment. I just don't think, quite frankly, as I went through the proposal, that I wasn't enamored with it, quite frankly. I just don't think it's going in the right direction. But I know we have to do something, and I'm going to have something to say later on when we're on the budget discussion. But the goal is to increase enrollment. The goal is to bring to our communities in the geographical area out there a greater understanding of career and technical education, I think, and communicating better with our alumni, communicating better with our companies in this area. And I'm not sure that that proposal touched on any of that. So I just hope we don't sign up with them at this point. I think I'd like to recommend you wait a month.
Pam, where is the enrollment committee on its work? I think this might be a place to mention that we were going to hope to have on the agenda the middle school access guidelines. But the administration, from what I understand, hasn't finished reviewing it and discussing it. So I really hope that would be ready so we could have that at the March meeting. No later than that. I think we really need to have that I would really like to have it on the agenda for the March meeting. Pam, do you want to add anything about the enrollment committee's work? I hear what you're saying, Ford.
Yeah, so should I do that now? So, since it's sort of tied into
If that's okay with you.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I see it's down there, but let's do it up here.
Yeah, so at our last enrollment committee task force, we spent a significant amount of time really talking about, what's the best way of proceeding. And we talked about a number of different options. And Jeff actually had put together a document that really helped focus our thinking, where he laid out all of the different enrollment initiatives in one place, all the different initiatives that we've been talking about and what the status is of them. And, there's a number of things that we've been able to move forward on. I think the parent liaisons, we're particularly very excited about and glad that that's in play. The access document where, next meeting we'll be able to ratify. But there are a lot of things on that list that we have not been able to get to. And the committee came to, I think, the agreement that, there's different ways that we can go. We can go right now in a direction of spending money doing more PR, marketing with an outside firm, but thought that given where we are right now, probably the best use of resources would be to have someone on staff, like to be an additional staff person, not an assistant, but a real professional level staff person who would be able to take on and, really follow through on a lot of these initiatives. We, recognize that, what we're asking to do is beyond the scope of what our current staff, would be, capable of doing. So that would be, probably the best way of proceeding. That said, I think everyone also said that we need to pay attention to the website. But, that's not branding and that's not the logo. But I think in terms of having the technical expertise to be developing the website, in fact, there was discussion about whether we need to have that also on staff. So it's something that we can be having someone do on an ongoing basis. But basically, the sum was, we have a lot of initiatives in place. Right now, what's standing in our way is really the staff time in order to be able to accomplish these things. And that was a direction that we wanted to really have further discussion on how can we be adding to our internal capabilities.
Jeff, sorry.
I believe that over the next few weeks or a month or two, there's going to be a very strong recommendation from the enrollment committee to kind of put all these issues that have been brought up, because I've been taking notes of all the issues from all the members that brought up of all these things, to come up with kind of a grand design and not getting too far into the budget thing yet. But one of the reasons why there was no large line item in the budget for what we loosely called marketing was because a lot of it doesn't fall directly under marketing, and we didn't have extra actual dollar figures for it yet. And we're going to need a little bit more time before we get to that point. Okay?
How much time do you think you need, Jeff?
How much are we going to need?
How much time? I'm not
I would
pushing or
say it
pressing
depends.
this.
Within a month, I would hope.
By the March meeting?
I would hope. No guarantee, but I would hope.
Okay.
And the problem the problem that I see with this is that the proposal you have may not line, two areas, may not line up with all these other initiatives, because it could be good perhaps if it was kind of all done as one thing in which all the little pieces work together happily. And if you go ahead with this now, it may not. Also, a few comments on the website. I want to make sure that when we do spend the money, and it's going to be considerable, to have a new website created, I want to make sure that certain aspects of it are vetted by many different people. And the aspects would be something like design and usability. It would be how they're going to construct it. When they do the design, how flexible is it going to be? Because, you can, in programming, you can write code that's very easy to expand in certain ways and others not. So you have to think of the whole life cycle of it, okay, with respect to costs, the security of it, and the cost of maintaining it. So I want to make sure that all those aspects of the website, if we're going to pay a third person to do it, which is probably how we're going to go, want to make sure that all those aspects are considered. And of course, it also needs to match up possibly with some of the other initiatives that are coming along down the pipe. But I want to make sure if we're going to do it, we're going to spend the money and take the time to do it right. Because since my career has been programming systems and installing them for decades, I did that. And software, I know how many different places that this sort of thing can go wrong, and you can waste a lot of money. So I don't know what the real dollar figure should be to spend on this. It's going to be non-trivial. But I want to make sure we only have to do it once instead of trying to cut some corners or not vetting it sufficiently and then find out we have to throw it away and do it all over again, even if it costs us a little bit more time and a little bit more money.
So I just want a little clarification. So your plan, the enrollment committee's plan, is to come back to hopefully the next school committee meeting saying, these are the initiatives that we'd like to see happen and how.
Personnel.
And personnel.
Job descriptions, timing, maybe.
Okay, initiatives, I just want to write those. Initiatives, personnel,
For those things that we are not currently doing and we do not have the staff to do,
okay.
that have been talked about among the school committee over the last half year or so.
Dave, any other comment by anyone?
I could discuss that for a long time. I think I'll resist because it will come back in another report later.
That was my point. It's premature to get into it.
And we're not going to make it home in time to see the state of the
State of the Union.
I feel obligated.
Okay, so the plan is to bring more information to us at the March meeting. And how does that sit with the proposal that we've been reviewing? Can that be held off for a month so we can integrate the two pieces and parts?
Well, certainly we're not going to move forward with an initiative that may not be consistent with the end goal of the enrollment subcommittee. The intent was to see if we could address some things immediately, and then as a larger plan evolved. But if there's some concern that the proposal that we drafted and issued is not aligned with the larger plan, it's not worth our effort to go through it.
Yeah, it could be aligned, but from my perspective, it could be aligned, but it would be, I think, from my perspective, I would love to see the whole pie before we dip a fork into it.
I think we were anxious to try and
I understand
get
that.
some stuff
I understand
off
that.
the list.
Carrie, then Jim.
I will say that the website looks a whole lot better in the last 5 weeks than it did back in the December timeframe. I mean, I can actually begin to find things, there's moving images. But it's not just the website.
Right.
It's social media. It's being present where where kids and parents are going to see good news and good things about Minuteman, because what we are getting to is I mean, the whole point is enrollment. And I think we're in the midst of a discussion, and I would say it's a few weeks, and I know it may be cross signals to what you thought you were hearing at our January meeting, but I think that's it.
Okay. I saw hit 1, 2, 3.
Kevin, have you looked at utilizing some of our partnerships with like Middlesex and some of their programs to get either student interns or people who are on the verge of graduating to use this as part of their final presentation to help us with our concerns, but by leveraging the Middlesex or other community college programs that may have resources that wouldn't cost us a lot of money, but give them experience and opportunity to redesign our website, to present marketing ideas, or other opportunities for things, because they're living it right now. They're preparing to go out and think there might be a good portfolio opportunity for them, where we could leverage their expertise and training. And again, it may not even be the community colleges, but I'm utilizing that as we have the dual enrollment program, so we have connections with that facility. But we've got all these universities and these kids, and I've said it before, even our own students, there are opportunities for them to create, develop, and leverage the skills that they currently own to put to task. Now, before we actually implement, we would vet it out and see, but it's an opportunity to leverage those skills within our community and our network that would save us money, accomplish the task, and give them an opportunity.
You know, one thing I might suggest, Dave, is if you could sort of write that up and give it to the enrollment committee, they might be able to, they could integrate, review it and integrate it to see how that corresponds to or complements or fits into the plan that they're going to offer us to think about. That make sense?
Always interested to see proposals,
Okay.
but I will make one comment. I teach, I've developed 3 honors level high school courses, which are equivalent to more than a first year of college courses for high school. And even though I have some extremely bright, talented, dedicated students, I would not have them work on this kind of project. And the reason is that their time frame, because of all their other obligations, is such that they cannot guarantee a completion date. They don't have the skills in design. The quality of their final code varies greatly, let me put it that way. And then later on, when they leave, the question is who's there to maintain it? So you'd have to come up with and we've done this, I've done this for small things at the school. They would have to then teach the next generation of students to maintain it. And then you can get into trouble if the wrong person leaves, then you have to bring in a whole new crew to look at the code from scratch again, which is very time consuming and expensive. So I'm a little concerned about using student expertise to do this sort of thing from prior experience.
Well, rather than get into a deeper discussion about that, I would suggest, if you want to, Dave, write it up and give it to them, and then they can put it in the mix that they're considered in the mix that they're developing. And were you were next, Pam, and then Jim?
May I respond to Dave's question?
Sure, sure.
Excuse me, I just wanted to respond. The improvements that we've seen in the website over the past 5 or so weeks that we talked about were basically done by in-house staff, by teaching staff. Some of our DLC folks, our digital learning folks get involved, George, with that as well. So we have been utilizing our in-house staff to get us to where we are now. We really felt as though, given some of the feedback we heard and the urgency, that professional services for something like this may be appropriate. And I'm not necessarily sure what the numbers are that people are envisioning, and there may be something to do with the scope, but based upon the proposal we have, we're looking at $700-800 for this type of design, architecture, front-end design, the scope of work that we laid out. That may not be sufficient for what people are thinking, but in the grand scheme of things, we thought it wasn't a large amount of money to address something that seems to be an image problem that we thought we could deal with.
So you're saying under 10K?
Yes?
Yeah. I mean, that's fully reasonable.
Okay, Pam, and then Jim. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I realize we may be giving mixed messages. Enrollment is important, and we need to be working on this right now versus, oh, wait a second, let's wait a little bit. However, let me just put it in context that we do have our next enrollment task force meeting next Tuesday. So we're not talking about waiting very long. And I do think that there's a lot of merit to make sure that we're having, that we're thinking about it in a comprehensive approach.
Yes, Carrie, or wait a minute, Jim. Jim.
That's okay, Carrie. Carrie can go ahead.
If we don't have our 2 other members here shortly, at least one of them, we're going to need to have another meeting in the very near future anyway. I'm thinking Tuesday might be a reasonable time to do that. We have the enrollment and then report back without losing too much time.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Jim.
I just want to make sure that I hear that the enrollment committee is comfortable with the budget as I'm presented, and that what you're talking about can be dealt with within the context of the budget, or are we talking about doing something different?
Carrie, and then Jeff.
I should turn around. We actually did talk about that.
Yeah.
Without knowing what we would be paying for and in which line items and columns we might be paying for it, we were hesitant to ask Kevin to make what might be just, artificial changes in the budget for the point of, showing here's what we're marketing. I mean, the $100,000 has been discussed, thrown out, but Kevin has made the point that as we are able to define the steps we want to take, some of it is going to be here, and some of it is going to be there, and some of it is going to be somewhere else, and it's more about how we spend the money that is being budgeted than adding to a budget, which, you know,
So this is sufficiently flexible.
yes, and where there.
Right, the fungible
Where
areas,
there might potentially need to be a transfer from one line item to another, that is within the school committee's authority to do next year. You know, when we're actually there and
Right.
doing it.
If we could wrap this up, but I'd just like to end by, I think we have other agenda items and we are going to come back and talk about this topic again. I think one of the messages that I'd like to give to the staff is that we enormously appreciate what you're doing and value what you're doing, but we're not, and we think that perhaps, or I think that perhaps you could use more resources to get it done, but to get it done. But I think what you're also hearing, what I'm also hearing and have heard, and I think all of us are hearing, is how important and how significant and how invested we are in increasing the enrollment of the school by the member towns, and how that it really is, we see it as a major effort and a major investment of our time and energy. And I believe that I said that at the last officers meeting too, about this is a big deal. I know it is to the staff too. It's a big deal to the school committee. And if we can integrate our forces and work with one another to develop going back to the pie that I brought up, we'll be in a good place. We want to give you the resources that you need, because you have so much to do as it is. Anyway, that's just leave it at that and get into a further discussion about it at the next meeting. But I know it's important. It's very high priority with staff, but it's an extremely high priority for the school committee. I think we're hearing that. And we want to help everybody get the job done. It's not a criticism of staff, quite the contrary. We understand that there's a lot to do for all the responsibilities that you have, and we want to support you on that. Okay, that's it. My prerogative to say no more discussion on it. Moving on to, Kevin, goal number 5, are we going to do that in?
No report.
No report. Okay. Perhaps, could I mention about what I heard at the Community Preservation Committee, that Lexington wanted to reduce the amount, or not? All right, we'll let that's public. What I was going to say was that Lexington, originally Minuteman was asking about $8.5 million?
Yes.
And Lexington, I don't know, I'm not involved in the discussion, but they came before the Community Preservation Committee, on which I sit, and they were saying that Lexington looked like they wanted to offer to get involved in a $4.5 million athletic complex, or what they would want to contribute, with $1 million from CPC fund. So Lexington and Minuteman are still talking about the IMA, and I don't have anything more to tell you than that. Okay, Jack, principal's report. It's beginning on page 35 for the different field trips, we'll call them.
Thanks, Dave. You'll notice that our ski club is seeking permission to attend 3 out-of-state field trips. One is on Saturday, February 9th to Crotchet Mountain in New Hampshire. The other one is on Saturday, March 16th or Sunday, March 17th. And that's again to 2 different ski locations. And then the third one is Saturday, April 6th to Loon Mountain. So we're seeking permission for those, but of course it's going to depend on how many students sign up and then the weather conditions as well. So I don't really have numbers just yet. And again, we're seeking permission, but just know that These trips are subject to, again, student participation and weather.
Alice?
I'd like to move to approve the out-of-state field trips to Cratchit Mountain, Bennington, New Hampshire on February 9th, Sunapee Mountain, or Sunday River Ski Area, Newbury, New Hampshire on March 17th, Loon Mountain in Lincoln, New Hampshire on April 6th.
Any discussion? Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous 8.
And may I just say, Dave, that the last ski trip, which I think was over Christmas break, was a huge success. We had over 20 students, and the MPA donated $700 towards that trip to reduce the cost of ski rentals for our kids, which was nice of them, too.
Very good, yeah. Do most of the rent skis?
Some kids rented, whereas some kids brought their own.
Julie, you got the count, 800? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I hope they have a lot of fun. Do you go?
I don't. Skiing, I'm not built for skiing.
It's watched down.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kevin, moving on to the budget. Looked like we won't be taking a vote tonight, but we can have a discussion about it.
Whatever the
has
chair's
questions.
pleasure is, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you're right, we won't be able to have...
Carrie?
I would say unless there are questions for clarification purpose, to put the discussion off until the people who are going to
All right.
vote on it are here to discuss it.
Okay. Well, I don't think we need to vote, we can't vote on it because they're not here. But we'll let all, jot down any questions you might have, and we'll bring them up when we're at at least two-thirds complement. Okay, moving on to post-grad tuition.
Yes,
Oh, so, let's see. Yeah, no, that would be,
item B, I believe,
item B.
is setting a rate, so I don't
Yeah,
believe
do
I think we're okay voting.
We're okay
you're fine
voting on
with that. That's
Yes,
level
Alice.
funding it.
I move to establish a postgraduate tuition rate at $7,600 per program effective July 1, 2019.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, any question about that?
Yes.
Anybody have a question? Yes, Jeff?
What's the current rate?
$7,600 per program.
Got it.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? 800. Very good. Page 39. Alice, how would you like to move there?
Surplus property.
That's when we're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll move that. Vote to authorize the disposal of surplus property as described.
Okay,
Second.
that's on 39. Okay, any discussion about that? Kevin, have you wanted, it's on page 39 in the packet.
I don't have, nope, just our efforts to try and move to continue selling surplus property, to get ready for the move. For those that may be interested, however, we have collected about $16,700 with some of the furniture equipment we've already sold.
Good, good.
We have more pending, another $5,000 pending, so we just keep
Very good.
keep moving it along.
Do you think any of this will sell?
I think some will. I can't tell
I
you
saw something
which.
for electric trains, the electric train.
Ooh,
I want
ooh.
that.
Model train
bid.
controller.
I have model trains up in the attic. Might worry
Yes,
about
Jeff.
the-
I have a very, very important question on this item before we vote.
You always have important
The
questions.
last one?
Are you kidding? 4
last
candy
one?
word processors? Are you kidding me?
I knew you'd ask me about that, Jeff, I knew.
How old are those? Those go back to
Museum
collected-
quality.
early 90s, something like that?
Museum quality, Jeff.
Some things are hard to get rid of.
Candy 10s? Are you kidding?
Okay, all in favor? 800. Very good, thank you. Subcommittee reports, I think with the review policy manual, Alice, and then with a recommended action plan.
Okay, so since everybody is following Marie Kondo and folding their socks so they stand up correctly, I don't know if you all do that or anything, but it is a huge thing
What
going
was that
on
again?
nationally. There's this reorganizing everything and folding everything so it stands up by itself.
It's becoming a thing.
It's a thing, so there are verbs associated with it and everything, but what I've been doing is doing that with the policy manual. So,
Okay, good.
yeah. So we have hundreds of policies, some more useful than others. I did a little thing which is in front of you that Julia printed out. It's got yellow highlighter on it. Okay, so we had a complete update of the manual back in the day. We did our bylaws. Some of you remember the agony. And we have a policy which requires us to review every policy every 5 years. We are behind on that. The policy itself needs to be updated. If you turn to the second page, you will see the actually useful policies that we've done in the past 5 years. And they all pertain to maintaining a good school for the kids, things like that. But we do have a couple of hundred policies that we have to bring up to date. And I want to remind everybody that they're kept online. The only person who can update the online policy manual is Julia. And then Julia, this is the process that actually Liz developed, but she updated the online copy and then made 2 paper copies, and she kept one and I kept one, so there was always, 2 paper copies off-site, 1 paper copy off-site that would be a backup. So what I'd like to recommend for us to do is I'll bring back a revised policy on creating policy because ours is archaic. It talks about using an online portal because in 2009 we had to get special permission to do that. And then we should meet with an individual from the administration, and I actually learned at Monty Tech that there is a dedicated person from the administration. In that case, it's a business manager, but it doesn't have to be. It's up to the superintendent, who prioritizes the policies for update and review and keeps track of which ones need to be done so that you don't end up with a backlog. And any new policies that are needed, especially like the new building. And that we actually add more people to the policy task force to review and compare the policies that have to correlate with the revised regional agreement, because for whatever reason, school committee policy books incorporate pieces of their regional agreements as policies. So there's actually a requirement that you're updating in 2 places, which is like the worst possible thing to do, but they all do it, and this school district did it too. We had a battle about it at the time, but we ended up doing it. So instead of saying, see the regional agreement on all the policies, you quote the part of the regional agreement. That's what was done. So we have to redo those. They can be done with a consent calendar, and that means that we cut and paste the piece that's required into the policy, update the footer to show it's a new date, and then we adopt a bunch of them all at once as a consent calendar because they're really not controversial. So that's how we could do that. And then, that's what I would recommend. So then there's also a bunch of policies that we should develop because we have a new building and update some. And I've listed them here: school facilities use, admissions, policies relating to facility rental, maintenance, naming, renaming, and unnaming of buildings, rooms, etc., security policies, public gifts to the school, and animals in school, which is going to have to change. And then you'll recall the discussion of the miniature horses.
Yes.
When we did it before.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's about 20 policies that have to be done because they were placeholders, they were held for discussion, and there was no resolution. And in order to move forward and just get the thing done, we sort of put them on the side. They're still on the side. So we have to decide what to do with those. And that's basically all we have to do. So I would recommend that we have a couple more people that are task-oriented people who would want to look at these and move quickly through the process, not getting bogged down in minutia to get these done. So
for people involved, do you see someone on the staff, a staff member, perhaps with your recommendations, looking at which ones we should do first, and then having them work on them?
The superintendent, per our policies, is in charge of deciding which ones need to be done.
Yeah.
And bringing those to the policy task force. But there should be somebody in the building who's sort of maintaining this database. I have all of these in a spreadsheet. I don't have them in a database, I have them in a spreadsheet. I know exactly what day they were approved. So that's done, but it shouldn't really be a member of the school committee that's doing that.
Yeah, so these are not in the database. The second page is not in the database. Is that what you're
There
saying?
is no database. There's a PDF file.
It's a PDF file of.
It's just a PDF file of 300 and God knows how many policies.
Which I have tried to read through.
Well, I've read them all in the past few weeks. And,
Do you, yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
do you, as a result of that, have a list of things that are absolutely critical to be revised?
yep,
And the rest, there's nothing critical, so we could do a gang vote to at least start the 5-year clock?
yeah, I
on it?
do. So I actually have them numbered, according to what I believe to be a priority. But I don't know if that's the correct priority, because the school district is really going to have to decide that. These are the policies that they live by.
But at least it restarts the clock on the 5 years for the ones.
Right,
that
right.
The general opinion is,
Right.
this isn't too bad.
Right, so, I and some other people from the school committee need to meet with somebody from the administration to do this in a systematic manner, is what I'm saying. And it can't just be the school committee that's doing it.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Do you have an opinion about that? Who are the, maybe this is a question for Ed when he returns, who will be the administrators that work with or to consult with, if you wish, meet with the planning, with the policy committee?
Alice sent us the items last week. I'd like to review it with the superintendent and see who the appropriate person would be to coordinate updating these policies. I can think of a couple of people that it might be appropriate for them to take on, but I'll let the superintendent decide that.
Okay. And would you like to have people added to the committee?
Yeah.
Do we hear some volunteers who would like to work with you, or do you want to ask people, Alice?
Oh, no, anybody who wants to do it is great. I just, it's they have to be task-oriented. Like, show up and do the job.
Do I hear any volunteers at this point? Sherry, were you volunteering?
No, I'm saying I'm also deputy moderator coming into town meetings. so
She's bowing out.
Probably is not the best time for me to take on 500 policies.
It's super fun. And I'm telling you, you can actually fold them up and make them stand on their own.
I'll talk to you about it. I've also taken on a new role, but outside of the school committee, but I'll talk to you about it.
First.
So Alice, I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
All right,
We could
Eddie,
nominate them, they're not here.
the two that are not here. Any questions for Alice or comments for Alice?
No, just thank you so much again for continuing to work with this as you have for so many years. And your organization and common sense is just off the charts.
This is their 20th year. We ought to give her something. 20th year of doing these policies.
Not quite that long. It just seems that way. For every year of doing policies, plus doctors.
She knows how interesting I am.
All right, here we go. Moving on. Thank you. I'll talk to you, Alice. Secretary's report, I think, anything, Pam, there's approval of the draft minutes?
Okay, I move that we approve the draft minutes of December 15th and January 15th as presented. The minutes start on page 42.
Second.
Any discussion about the minutes and comments about them? Okay, all in favor? 800, thank you. Moving into executive session, I think number 2 had to deal with the IMA, correct?
I don't, if I might.
Well, just hold on 1 second. Was the intention for number 2 to deal with the IMA?
It was to discuss some of the considerations for leasing property it's a continued discussion on
Of the
leasing.
IMA? Or not?
I'd rather talk about it in executive session.
Oh, all right.
You do want an executive session.
Oh, yes, yes.
Carrie?
I am concerned about a potential for complaint or violation of the open meeting law if we discuss this, if we move into executive session, because the agenda we saw, which was online when it was emailed Friday night, and what turned up in my mailbox over the weekend, I don't know how they're coming to me because there's no postage on it, so somebody
Yeah,
must be dropping them
mine
off.
too.
But in any case, both of those say possible executive session without a purpose, without a reason. In the open meeting law, it says that a meeting must be posted at least 2 business days prior to the public meeting. And that posting, the agenda has to have a listing of topics that the chair reasonably anticipates will be discussed at the meeting. And I don't think a reasonable man would think that a possible executive session is a reasonable man's expectation of discussing, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, etc. So I'm worried about that. I would further say that if we have to have another meeting anyway, that we move it to that meeting.
I think you're right. We should have something that says we're going to vote, possible vote or vote something, and then state it for executive session.
There's also in the conduct of the meeting before entering an executive session,
Yeah, right.
the chair is supposed, or somebody is supposed to
Okay.
read the specific
Right.
purpose. But I think just the possibility of an executive session would open too many questions if later on it became an issue.
Well, we do have it in the agenda of devoting to enter into executive session to talk about the executive previous or an earlier.
Only what's distributed at the
Whichever
table
there-
tonight.
Sorry?
Only what's distributed at the table tonight, not what was available business days prior to the meeting.
Let's see what we got.
Yeah, it was Friday night. It was Friday night, Dave.
Okay, so we'll postpone the whole
My
thing.
email version.
We'll postpone the whole thing until our next meeting.
And somewhere in between, somebody could get some clarification on, I think there's some
Right.
ambiguity.
Okay.
But the Attorney General's office or the Secretary of State's office has a lengthy thing with 200 questions and answers.
Yeah, it tells you what you have to have. Okay, let's now decide on another meeting date. When we'll have our next meeting on the budget, to vote on the budget.
When is the snow date? Is that
Thursday, so that's really,
This Thursday.
it's too late to do it 2 business days
Yeah.
before, even though that was the snow date.
Well, our enrollment task force is the 12th, which is next Tuesday. Could we piggyback it with that?
And then we've got the updated information.
What time are you
That's at
planning to meet?
5 o'clock.
And how much time do you need for your meeting? With not what you'll take.
An hour,
7?
hour and a half, 6:30.
So we could meet at 7,
For 6:30 is fine.
6:30, all right?
So I'll be in San Antonio, but if Lancaster shows up, or
If either
Or
one of
Arlington
them
shows
shows up, they're bigger
I'm bigger than Belmont.
in terms of the,
Yeah.
Okay, 6:30 on the 12th. Okay. Everyone agree to that? And
I won't be there.
Jim won't be able to.
okay, just a moment, let me see what that does.
I mean, if Arlington and Belmont are both out, you still have 2/3. So you need one or the other. You need either Jen or Sue, and you need.
And you say
need everyone else.
you won't make it?
Correct.
So we'll,
Not being here takes.
if you would,
down to
tomorrow morning, check with
91.08.
Sue and Jennifer. All right, so Julie will check with Sue and Jennifer. If one of them can come to that meeting, she'll let us know tomorrow, let everybody know tomorrow. If not, we'll have to come up with another time for another meeting, for the meeting. Okay, do we hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? 800. Okay, thank you all very much.